the two most important things that I've found in running a business is creative problem solving and leadership. If you can lead people and, and get them to work, towards a unified goal, that's one component. But really, you're just taking a whole bunch of new problems that are popping up, and you might not be an expert in it, but if you can say, hey, that's fine, I'll go figure out how to answer that, and you creatively solve that problem, then you're going to be able to handle anything in business.
Hey, it's John again with VETtoCEO, and we are sponsored by Fola Capital. And we're here with another veteran that bought a company, and he's here to tell his story today. His name's Ben Wespi. How you doing today, Ben?
Hey, great, John. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, good to see you, man. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. So let's dig right in. Let's just cut to the chase. Can you just describe the company you bought? What does it do? Just the background.
Yeah, sure. I bought Ellington Industries. We do mechanical insulation. Most people don't know what that is. This is wrapping pipe and duct with insulation in large commercial projects, large light industrial projects. We do most of our work on Camp Lejeune and Cherry Point, so military construction. We do some maintenance work down at General Electric down in Wilmington, but we've been trying to expand that business out to schools and hospitals across North Carolina. But that's our trade.
Yeah, when did you actually buy it? How long have you owned it?
We closed April 30th of 24, so it's been about 18 months now. Jumped right into it. That was actually 1 year prior to my retirement from the military. I on the day. So bought it at year 19 of my 20-year career in the Marine Corps. And then jumped right into it. Took a lot of leave. I had my wife, who was a partner in the business, that was jumping in and running it right when we closed, so that I could continue serving active duty. But over that next year, we had people in place to make sure that it was running well, and it gave me a period where I could kind of transition out of the military and jump right into something that we already had.
Yeah, that had a way to take a break and relax after a long military career, Ben. But hey, let's drill down into that a little bit more. Tell us about your military career. Where'd you serve? What branch? All that stuff.
Yeah, sure. I joined in 2005, Marine, as a signals intelligence EW operator. So I spent most of my time between MARSOC and other and NSA. I across the world. But yeah, I ended up retiring out of MARSOC as a chief warrant officer. And, it's actually quite odd for folks in my field to jump out and go do something completely outside of SIGINT EW, because, it's such a lucrative field. You get a clearance and you have a lot of connections into really, really, niche skill sets that, those contracts pay a lot of money. So, I turned away a lot of money in order to go and do something, completely different and take a lot of risk. But yeah, that was my job. Multiple combat deployments. I served with MSOTs, we special operations teams, starting in 2010. I spent a nice 4-year stint over in Thailand as a liaison to Thai forces over there, and came back and was bouncing between MARSOC and fleet units. That it was a fun ride, but I decided to go into something completely different.
Yeah, you alluded to that in your opening comments. You kind of started the process before you get out. But what was going through your mind as you got in your later years in the Marines and you were thinking about retiring? You just said that you could have jumped into an easy, lucrative job. But what kind of was driving you to think about owning a business or being an entrepreneur? And what was going through your head at that point? And I asked this question so you can help others who are thinking about it, that were in the same exact spot you were in a few years ago. So, what was going through your mind and why did you lean towards that path?
Yeah, sure. So this path actually started a lot earlier in my career. I was, when I first came to MARSOC, I bought a house, and conversations with a realtor, we're going to have to get a home. And I was like, no, look, I'm buying a house. I'm not buying a home, right? I'm going to live there for a little bit, but then I'm going to move out. I'm going to rent it out because I want to invest in this asset class, real estate. And I did that, and I kept that house and we rented it out for a while. We ended up jumping back into real estate, but we took a brief moment right after we came back from Thailand when Crystal was looking at what's she going to pivot into, what's she going to do. And we started underwriting different franchises that she was planning to run. And we saved up some money, we did the due diligence on a couple different franchises, specifically looking at a residential cleaning franchise. And we were like talking to owners around California and ultimately decided, hey, this is not what we want to do. So turned around, took that money, and we went and did something else entrepreneurial, and we started investing in real estate. Spent a couple of years doing that. Great success because of the boom around COVID. We ended up going from residential real estate into commercial real estate, and it was through the network of other investors that we found that we kind of landed on a deal that was going to be real estate, but a lot of business, a big business component attached to it. It was a golf course, and so we started underwriting this golf course, and it reinvigorated this spirit of like, hey, let's like actually run a business. So after that golf course deal fell apart, we turned our attention. We said, let's go acquire something that's running right now. Not real estate related, but just something like a business that we could run. So we always have this entrepreneurial spirit. The idea, especially once we started doing real estate and we saw that, hey, we can actually buy a house in a different state and get it fixed up and get people in there. It kind of unlocked something saying like, look, if you take the risk and you jump into it, things are going to work out. It's going to be okay. You can figure it out. And we realized that, in our careers, we're still solving problems for other people. And we wanted to start solving problems for ourselves. So we'd always been thinking about that, even as we're, leading up to my transition out of the Marine Corps. So, the seeds had already been planted, and honestly, there was a seedling already growing by the time I was getting within 1 year of retirement. So that was what was going through my mind 1 year prior to retirement. And that's why we kind of jumped onto this path.
I'm writing that down. Solving problems for ourselves. That's great. I hadn't heard that one before, but not to go diverge down a path we don't want to go on in the podcast. But I mean, we're really good at solving problems and getting over obstacles in the military in general. It's one of the things the military gives us. So some of us get hooked on that. We get really good at it. It's strange how you brought that up without any prompting. So thanks for that.
To build on that, John, the one thing, like the two most important things that I've found in running a business is creative problem solving and leadership. If you can lead people and get them to work, towards a unified goal, that's one component. But really, you're just taking a whole bunch of new problems that are popping up, and you might not be an expert in it, but if you can say, hey, that's fine, I'll go figure out how to answer that, and you creatively solve that problem, then you're going to be able to handle anything in business.
Yeah, that's great stuff, man. And we talk about that a lot at VETtoCEO. That's exact problem solving, leadership, and the two go hand in hand, right? And great advice. And I didn't prompt you to say that either. That's the cool thing about that.
I swear you didn't.
Now let's talk about the process of buying the company. You looked at a few before you actually bought this one, but let's zero in on the process of buying the company. What kind of met your expectations during that process? And what kind of surprised you and didn't meet your expectations during that process?
Yeah, sure. So, when we jumped into it, we were bringing some experience already in looking for deals in the real estate realm. And one thing that we found there was that, hey, you're not going to understand a market unless you have really good context, or you're not going to understand a good deal unless you have really good context in the market. So, if you're starting to invest in a certain spot, in a certain geographic region, you need to start looking at a lot of deals in that region to understand what's good and what's not. So we took the same idea into business, and we started underwriting a lot of different businesses. And, one of the other lessons that we took from real estate was, look, don't start haggling price prior to getting under an LOI. Just go and, if you find something that looks like it's going to meet your mark and it's in an industry that you're interested in, and it's got good financials, meets your your criteria, get under an LOI under that price that owner is, or that seller is listing it at. And then you can negotiate terms once you get into it and start digging into the details. So, things are going to change quite a bit under an LOI. You're going to have a lot of time going back and forth, digging into financials and whatnot. So, we took that into this, and it was the same thing. I went under an LOI with a couple, we had I think we had 2 LOIs accepted, that we were going under, and it's the same thing, just spending a lot of time going through due diligence on that business and negotiating with the sellers. And, that kind of met our expectations there. Let's see. I guess once we got into the acquisition, the actual acquisition part, one thing that I didn't think about as deeply, but I should have, and I think people should when they're when they're going to buy a business, is conflict resolution in your contract. A lot of times you get to the attorney's table to sign, and you're just trying to you've done so much due diligence on this project, or this company, you understand everything about it, or just about everything about it, and you're trying to get through the day and sign these papers and get off to the races of jumping in. And there's a whole conflict resolution portion about, hey, how are you going to solve things if things went wrong in the deal? And that's really important because really that's like the only thing you have once you get on the other side to go back and say, okay, how are we going to solve this problem, this disagreement that we've come into post closing? So that's one thing I'd say. I didn't expect to be such an issue, but in our situation, it was an issue. And I think that's something that, as you're looking at buying a business, just pay attention to that as you get into closing.
Yeah. What about the time it took? Did that meet your expectations? Did it take less time or more time than you thought?
Yeah, it would probably normally take a lot more time, but the problem, the issue or the unique situation that we were under is our owner or the seller in our deal was had health issues, and he had to get out of the business quickly so he could go spend time with his family. So we spent, I want to say, about 5 months, 6 months under an LOI, which is probably shorter than most periods when somebody's acquiring a business. But yeah, I would expect under normal circumstances that should go a lot longer.
Yeah. I remember you brought that up, and that's pretty common when it triggers a business sale is the owner getting sick, and we don't wish that on anybody, but clearly that probably accelerated things there. Thanks for that. So given that experience that you just described, let's go before that actually happened. Prior to you buying the company, rewinding the tape and watching it all over again. What are like 2 or 3 things you wish you knew before you went into that experience you just described?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in the construction industry, and I didn't have people in my network that understood the construction industry from a perspective that I should have had, or that I wish I'd seen prior to buying the business, right? So there's some unique aspects to our industry, such as, long billing over many months, for like monthly billing for a very long project over several months, where there's a lot of risk built into each of those projects, especially if let's say you have like 5 large projects that a company's doing at any given time, right? The actual billing amount for the completion status of each of those projects at the point of sale ends up being really important, because it's sometimes that owner might come in and say, I'm going to bill this up to 80%, but it's only 50% complete. And what that means is then as a new owner, you have to step in and you can't let that customer down. So you're going to pay for the material and labor to go complete it, but there's nothing to bill on, right? So it ends up putting you into a really difficult position from a cash flow perspective, once you close on that. And for me, like I said, I didn't have anybody in the industry that knew that risk would exist. And I obviously didn't know. So what I probably wish I'd done is gone and either sought out somebody who had either acquired a construction business or owned a construction business at some point, and just had a conversation with them. Didn't need to be in my specific field of mechanical installation, but had a conversation with them about, hey, what are things I need to think about? Because they probably would have known about these issues. And then, after the fact, I've spoken to, suppliers in my industry, and they're like, look, the way a lot of people like to do this, they try to cut projects. They try to close it at the sale date, right? Like, don't start new projects when you're going under contract and you're trying to sell the business. Just try to push those out so that billing can be clean. So that's something that I wish I'd known. And now going back, either expand my network or hire a consultant in the industry who understood those things that could kind of break that down for me. I think I would have revealed places where I should look for potential issues to protect ourselves post-acquisition.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I'm just curious, did you have a working capital adjustment in your agreement?
We had we had a what do you call it? A holdback. So
Holdback.
So there's like a period, I think most have these, there's like 10% holdback on the purchase price to kind of solve like billing issues. That was not nearly enough, unfortunately. we didn't get working capital from the buyer or from the seller. We had the bank, borrowed some working capital and then brought our own working capital in. But yeah, billing is something that, you got to understand the invoicing process and how much cash flow you need, right? When we went into this, and I don't know, maybe it would have been right if we made, kept these expectations, but for our industry, or for our industry, what we're doing, I will bill on a monthly basis on net 30 terms, which means that I could go work on a project. I could go hire a new crew and work them on a project for a month. Then I would bill that project. And then 1 month later, maybe I get paid. So I need to cover 2 months of operating costs with that crew. Now, your supplier, you have to pay the material costs, but you're usually on a net 30 term with them too. So you have a little leeway there. But for labor, I'm paying those guys weekly, right? So in our mind, we're thinking, okay, I bill my projects monthly and I get paid every, in net 30 terms. I need about 2 months worth of operating capital to make sure that we're good. But, probably needed a bigger buffer than that. And given the billing discrepancies, definitely needed a lot more than that to cover it. So understanding that cash flow process, and then it will give you a good sense of, all right, how much operating expenses do I actually need to keep this thing going through that transition?
Yeah. So just to summarize, it sounded like I heard, have someone with industry expertise on your team as you're leading up to a purchase, whatever industry it's in, and getting a little bit more in tune with the cash flow post sale, and relating to billing and stuff. Sounds like a couple of things. Thanks for that. So, sounds like you've been running the company for about 18 months now as we're recording this. Let's talk about after the sale. What are some things that have happened that you've learned from, and what kind of met your expectations there? And then what surprises did you have that you'd like to share with us that you learned from?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that, one strength that we had going into this deal was I'm running this with my wife, and my wife has a degree in accounting and a degree in finance. She worked in corporate banking for 6 years. Then she pivoted over to cloud computing, and worked in a cloud computing startup, cloud migration startup for 6 years. And then she came over, and she's our CFO, COO, and lead estimator for the business. So she jumped from industry to industry and figures it out. But so she's a partner in this, right? And it was critically helpful when I was still active duty for a year when we closed the company. But she brings a lot of strengths that I don't have, and we complement each other really well. We understood this, through doing business as real estate investors together, that having a partner with a complementary strength is extremely helpful. And, there's plenty of days when I see her working on something or doing something, and I'm like, there's no way I could do what you do. And she will look at me after I get off a phone call with, a prospective customer, and she's like, there's no way I could do what you do. And so that was something we knew that was going to be a really a benefit for us going into it, and proved itself in spades as we went underway with the business post acquisition. The billing stuff was a surprise, of course. That was something we had to learn quickly. Other than that, let's see.
You have any surprises on any of your jobs, or HR related, employee related stuff that you learn from?
Yeah, I'm in a high turnover industry. We see a lot of labor, guys that come into work and that, it's just not for them. So they move on, or it's, it's not a good fit for both of us. And so, they move on. Knowing when to, and I guess I'm not talking about, laborers, but, back office staff, people that are actually going to run the processes that run your business. We had some that came with us, and knowing when like you own this business now, right? Like in the military, you've heard this highlighted by somebody else, another veteran who went off and he's running a very large startup. He makes the point that, look, when you're in the military, you can't fiire people on your team, but when you're running your company, you can fire people and you can bring in better talent. And you can expect, a higher standard, and you can create that team, right? And we were at a point where I probably we let someone stay for longer than we probably needed to, right? It wasn't a good fit for them. It wasn't a good fit for us. and we just kind of kept stringing it along. And we should have thought more carefully about, hey, how can I optimize this team to perform at the pace that we expect them to perform at, and with the technical skill and the creativity that we expect out of them. And so we didn't think about that as clearly as we should have going into it, and now we're thinking about it more clearly. Like, hey, let's get the right people on the team. Make sure it's good for them and good for us. Sometimes it's just not a right fit, and it's not anybody's fault, right? But it's just we'll work better in different places, and I want that person to be happy with where they're working too, and feel proud of what they're doing. So, so I guess that's something that I didn't expect to have to deal with as quickly as I probably should. Well, I didn't expect to have to implement that mindset, but now it's something I definitely think about. Yeah.
Yeah, and on a related note, I mean, what was your comfort level walking in and how all these people work for you? Like from your military experience, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I imagine that wasn't that intimidating to you, right? Do you think that your military experience and managing others and leading others helped you, get these guys going and over the change process with having a new owner? Have you put some thought into that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a construction business, right? So you're dealing with construction trades guys. And these are hard people, but I came out of MARSOC deploying on teams. I've worked with like really hard, like strong people, for my whole career. And so there's nothing intimidating about walking up and leading a crew of construction workers after you've gone to combat with people. And really, I just remember thinking in the first couple months, we had a lot more work ahead of us than we had crew available. And so I had customers that were like, hey, where's your people? And, they're bringing me on sites, and they're kind of like, giving me a lot of grief because they don't have enough people on site. And I'm none of that. I'm like, okay, these are words, right? Like, yes, I understand this is a difficult thing for you, customer, but it's not like going to make me feel any way because you're angry about the progress on this job, but like nothing here other than, safety, of course, the progress and the performance level is not going to kill anybody. Right. So,
right.
Lives are not at stake here. It's money. So, hey, just relax. We'll figure it out. We'll get we'll get you taken care of. But, allow me to be cool in times of pressure under, with customers who kind of felt like they weren't getting their needs met, and be able to, rationally explain to them, hey, this is how we're going to help you get your needs met. That helped a lot.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Probably will help you for the rest of your life too. But
yeah.
So what do you want to leave listeners with? Anything you haven't mentioned yet? Any advice you'd want to give other guys and gals like you that are sitting there thinking about it over some bourbon, wondering what they're going to do when they get out, and whether or not the ETA or the entrepreneurship journey is one they should take? Any other words of wisdom for those folks?
Yeah, I would, we talk about this a lot. Crystal and I, when we, after we bought this company and we had, billing discrepancies, we had issues our customers weren't paying, we're, dealing with a lot of, cash flow, stress. And, we're asking ourselves, like, what would we have done if we didn't buy this business? Like, do we regret buying this business? Would we have done anything different? And what we've both concluded is that, hey, if we didn't buy this business, we would have bought something else, right? We would have done something. We would have been running a business, some other business, right? I think like we were on a path to go and try to own our own problems anyway. And so if you're the kind of person that's thinking about these things, if that's just who you are, like, go embrace who you are, right? Go and take these challenges on. The other thing, and I mentioned this during our webinar the other day. I equate this, I look at this kind of like having a kid. And I remember a conversation I had with my brother, an older brother, 5 or 6 years, actually it's more like 10 years ago. He had just had kids. He was coming to visit me, and I was talking to him, and I was in a situation where I tried to figure out, hey, what am I going to do in my life? I'm going to get married and have kids or what? And he said, look, if you were to ask me like 1 year prior to the birth of my kid, or, getting married or any of this stuff, like, do you want to, be get no sleep, have to wake up in the middle of the night to change diapers, and not have any social life, feel exhausted all the time. All your focus is on this one thing, and you give up going out and playing, do stuff with your friends or play video games or all these things. I would have said no, right? That's not what I want to do. But then when you're in that situation, if you'd say, hey, do you want to go back to this? You'd say, well, no, because this is my priority now. This is what I care about now. And I think it's the same way with having a business, right? If you ask somebody, hey, do you want to be worried about payroll and dealing with accounting issues or, answering customer calls at 7:00 at night, next year, you'd be like, well, no, that's not what I want to do. But then when you're in it, you're like, no, this is I own this. This is my baby, right? I'm going to take care of this thing. I'm going to answer those customer calls at 7:00 at night. That's what I want to do because that customer is calling. He needs help, right? I want to solve these problems because they're my problems I'm solving, right? So it's a priority shift, right? It is super cushy, getting a nice government job, sit back, you get your PTO, you get 4-day weekends, right? All that stuff. And I think about that a lot too. I'm like, man, these guys, you don't know how good you have it, being able to shut off, right? But I wouldn't give up what I have to go back to that, right? I have something that I own. I have a baby, right? I have a kid that I'm raising, and in the form of company, and I get to solve those problems. Those are my problems to solve, and I reap the rewards when I solve those. They're not for somebody else. So I guess that's what I'll leave them with.
Yeah, and someday you can sell the company and you can't sell a job, right? So that's
or a child, right?
Or a child. In some countries you can, but not in ours. But you said that the other night. Yeah, that's such a good analogy about having a kid. If you described what it's like to have an infant or a toddler, it's not too appetizing until you have when you learn its greatest gift in life.
Yeah,
and you'd never go back. So. And own your own problems. I'm going to steal that one from you too. So, that's really cool. We are going to have problems no matter what we do in life, but at least when you're owning a business, you're solving your own problems, and it's kind of rewarding to do that. I love that. But, look, thanks for your time today. I'm going to give it to you for one more alibi if you got one. Other than that, we'll conclude for tonight. Anything else you want to add?
Nothing at the top of my head, John. This was great. Thank you.
All right, Ben, thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy day to share your experiences. We do this for the benefit of others that are on the same path as veterans leaning towards entrepreneurship. And I want to thank you for contributing to that, not just today, but just this past week in our program. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John.